programming equal priority to all goals or constraints. And those equal priority to all constraints cannot be violated. So, again, in linear programming, maximizing or minimizing, yun kaya nga siya optimizing. In goal programming, we are satisfying something. And what that something is, that's actually the deviation variable. Hello everyone, so welcome to our discussion regarding the goal programming. So first of all, before we start this discussion regarding goal programming, I just wanted to ask you guys, what comes into your mind when you hear the word goal programming? Do you think what is the difference of goal programming versus linear programming and like the integer linear programming? So what comes into your mind when you hear the word goal programming? Okay, so goal programming. Basically, goal programming, as defined here on our PowerPoint presentation, this is a branch of multi-objective optimization, which in turn is a branch of multi-criteria decision analysis. It can be thought of as an extension of generalization of linear programming to handle multiple normally conflicting objective measures. So what does it mean? It says here that this is an extension of generalization of linear programming, just like the integer linear programming. So when we say extension of LP, dalawa lang yan, integer linear programming and goal programming. So dito sa goal programming, normally sabi dito, conflicting objective measures. So there is the term conflicting. On linear programming, we only have one goal and we don't have any conflicting measures there. Here, sa goal programming, meron tayong conflicting objective measures na tinatawag. Ano yun? So, aralin natin sa mga susunod na slide. Bakit may conflicting measure sa goal programming? So, another definition, goal programming basically is a very similar to linear programming models, but whereas linear programs have one objective, just like what I have said before, while the goal programs can have several objectives, and those objectives can sometimes be conflicting. So for your more realization of the differences between these two, between goal programming and linear programming. When we say goal programming, we have multiple goals to accomplish. Here in linear programming, we only have one goal. It's either to maximize profit, to minimize cost, etc., etc. So, the bottom line in linear programming, we only have one goal. That's why it is for optimizing. It is on optimization, maximization, minimization. While in goal programming, we don't maximize, we don't minimize specific variable only. What we do here in goal programming is to satisfying ang goal ni goal programming, not optimizing. Paanong satisfying? We actually have in goal programming a soft constraints na tinatawag, wherein this soft constraints represents goals or target that we'd like to achieve. While sa hard constraints, linear programming, constraints that cannot be violated. So, 100%, these constraints cannot be violated in linear programming. But in goal programming, yes, here they are. We have these constraints, sets of constraints. Pero we can actually violate some of those. That's why it is so they are called soft constraints sa goal programming. In goal programming, priority is set as desired by the researcher. So, in our case, you are the researcher here. You are the problem solver here. So, basically, you can have your priorities of goals or priorities of constraints na gusto mong ma-achieve. So, for example, constraints 1, do you want to achieve it? Yes or no? If yes, pangilan siya sa priority? Parang ganon. Now, we have the priority. So, yung less priority, pwede mo na hindi siya pwede mo siya siyang ma-violate. No? So, that is for the priority ng goal programming. Sa linear programming, equal priority to all goals or constraints. And those equal priority to all constraints cannot be violated. So, again, in linear programming, maximizing or minimizing, yun kaya nga siya optimizing. In goal programming, we are satisfying something. And what that something is, that's actually the deviation variables. So when we say deviation variables, we will explain that on our next slides. So just a heads up, deviation variables, these are the deviation of the values of something in your objective function and set of constraints that you wanted to be minimized. So this goal programming is more on minimizing the deviation. Okay? So note that when GP is formulated, GP stands for goal programming, we can solve it as the same as LP minimization. Take note, not LP maximization, but rather we can solve it as the same as LP minimization. Okay? So examples of multiple conflicting goals. So here they are. We have actually multiple conflicting goals. Maximize profits and increase wages paid to employees. See? How can we maximize profits while we are increasing the wages paid to employees? So somehow this is what goals, but they are somehow conflicting. So this is an example of multiple conflicting goals. Another example, upgrade product quality and reduce product cost. So, upgrading product quality, that is the first goal. Second goal is to reduce the product cost. And again, this is conflicting with each other. So, third, okay, so we don't have any third example. So, these two examples actually are multiple conflicting goals wherein na itatry natin is satisfy yung pareho nilang goal even na they are conflicting. That's actually the purpose of goal programming. Next, for the deviational variables, here they are. The deviational variables, we have here D sub I negative. This is what we call the underachievement. For example, we have a goal of $100 profit, but after 1 month, we only achieved $95 of profit. So basically, that is an underachievement, and that is represented by D sub I negative or D sub I minus. D sub I minus or D sub I negative, that's just the same. So either of the two kung anong gusto nyo dyan. Now for D sub I positive, this is overachievement. So take note guys, this is just a typo error. This is overachievement. Now, so when we say overachievement, for example, just like my example before, if our goal is to have $100 as our profit, month-end profit, and yet at the end of the month, we actually got $110. So the $10 there is overachievement, and that is actually represented by the variable D sub I positive. Okay, I hope that is clear with you. Now, these deviational variables represent the extent to which target goals are not achieved. The objective function then becomes the minimization of the sum of these deviations based on the relative importance within the preemptive structure assigned to each deviation. So, meaning to say, what we're wanting to do here in goal programming is to minimize this deviation. Kung paano natin gagawing 100 yung 110. No, yung 80, 85 or 90 na na-meet natin, paano natin papataasin to 100? So yung layo ng under or overachievement ng certain variables natin from our goal, that is our purpose here in GP. No? Paliitin yung deviation. Okay? So next, letter Z here, actually, this is the sum of all the deviations from all desired goals. So meaning to say, min C doesn't mean to minimize profit, But in goal programming, min z, or minimization of the z value, actually means the minimization of the sum of all the deviations from all desired goals. Okay? So, we actually have here the two types of constraints from all desired goals. For the first type of constraint, we have the system constraint. When we say system constraint, this may be influenced but are not directly related to goals. So, they can influence the goal pero hindi sila directly related sa goals natin. When we say goal constraint, these are constraints that are directly related to our goals. So, for the characteristics of a GP problem, we have the three characteristics. Paano mo nga ba masasabi na yung isang problem is not a linear programming or it is not a integer linear programming but rather a goal programming? So, when the model are all minimization problem, isa na yan sa characteristics na pwede siyang GP. Pero hindi ko sinasabi totally GP, pwedeng maging LP pa rin siya. May mga linear programming na ganun. No? Maraming minimization. Second, kapag na-meet niya lang tong tatlo, no, that is the time na matatawag siya as GP, no, as goal programming problem. Second characteristics is that there's no single objective. Ito yung pinaka-obvious. No? There's no single objective because that is for linear programming, but multiple goal to be attained. So if you see in the problem, if you read in the problem that the researcher, that the analyst, or any person that is in line with that problem are having some multiple goals in the problem stated, so basically it can be also already considered as goal programming. For the third one, the deviation from the high priority goal must be minimized to the greatest extent before the next highest priority goal is considered. Again, we have priorities na kino-consider dito sa goal programming. Unlike sa linear programming, that all constraints have the same priority level. Okay? So, let's have our example problem here. So, for example, actually, we have here the problem regarding the Harrison Electric Company. I hope you are familiar with this. This is an electric inline service company in United States of America, as far as I know. So, for the example, we have here the Harrison Electric that produces two products popular with home renovators: old-fashioned chandelier and a ceiling fan. But the chandeliers and the fans require two-step process involving wiring and assembly. It takes about 2 hours to wire each chandelier and 3 hours to wire a ceiling fan. Final assembly of the chandeliers and fans require 6 and 5 hours respectively. The production capability is such that only 12 hours of wiring time and 30 hours of assembly time are available. Each chandelier produced nets the firm $7 and each fan produced nets the firm $6. So Harrison Management wants to achieve several goals. And what are those goals? So these are the goals of the Harrison Management. Their first goal is to reach profit above 30. Take note of the term, guys. Their first goal is to reach profit not exactly 30, but above 30. Take note of the term, above 30. As much as possible. So, meaning to say, less than or equals 30. That is their first goal and that corresponds to their first priority. This actually doesn't mean na kapag una yung goal mo na ito, is siya na rin yung priority number 1. No, hindi po ganon. May mga goal number 1 na ang priority level niya is pwedeng siya yung priority number 3, priority number 4. It just so happened that on our problem, yung goal number 1, 2, 3, 4 natin is ayun din yung priority 1, 2, 3, 4 natin. But again, it is not fixed. Pwedeng mag-iba-iba yung priority level natin. Depende kung ano yung sinasabi ng goal natin. Dito kasi inayos ko na siya na magkakasunod, no? Anyway, it doesn't have anything wrong pagdating naman sa solution, no? Hindi naman siya ganun kalito, no? Anyway, so for the goal number 2, to fully utilize wiring department available hours. So, fully utilized daw yung available hours. So, again, when we say fully utilized, ma-maximize yung oras na meron tayo. And, sa tingin ko, these first 2 goals is actually soft constraint. So, let's check. Goal number 3 ko, soft or hard constraints. To avoid overtime in the assembly department. To avoid overtime. So, soft constraint pa rin siya. No, kasi hindi naman sinabi na to fully avoid or to don't incur even 1 hour of overtime. Ang sinabi niya lang is to avoid overtime. So, pwedeng mag-overtime pero as much as possible, sana hindi mangyari. No, yun yung sa ating goal number 3, considered also as our third priority. Okay. For goal number 4, the goal number 4 of the Harrison is to meet a contract requirement. So, they have actually their contract in producing the ceiling fans. So, at least 7. So, less than or equals to, more than 7. So, 7 or more. So, to meet contract requirement to produce at least 7 ceiling fans. That is, again, their 4th goal, and it corresponds to their 4th priority. Now, kung titignan natin, we have 2 products, and those products are considered for the variable assignment. Those are the x sub 1 and the x sub 2. So, x sub 1 here is the chandelier, and x sub 2 is the fan. Now, for the wiring, they have 2 hours for the chandelier and 3 hours for the ceiling fan. And design less than or equals to 12. Why less than or equals to 12? Because actually, I just have my pen, colored black. Okay, so less than or equals to 12. Actually, guys, if you see this, to fully utilize wiring department available hours. And ano yun? That is actually 12 hours. Diba? So, fully utilized. So, meaning to say, 12 pababa ang magagastos nila. Pwedeng eksaktong 12, pwedeng mas mababa na 12. And, hindi siya sinasabi na hindi ka pwedeng lumagpas ng 12. Pwede, actually, dahil ang sabi dito is to fully utilize wiring department. Kapag lumagpas ka ng 12, na-utilize mo pa rin naman yung 12 eh. So, meaning to say, even 14 or 15, na-utilize mo siya. And that is a characteristics of a soft constraint. Kaya nga lagi kong sinasabi, it is better na ma-master nyo muna yung linear programming, integer linear programming, all of the operations research 1 topics before dealing with operations research 2 topics. Dahil somehow, nakakalito siya, and bukod sa nakakalito, kadugtong siya talaga no OR1. Okay? So, next, for the assembly, we have 6 hours available for the chandelier and 5 hours available for the fan. Now, less than or equals to 30 to avoid overtime in the assembly department. So, as much as possible, sana ito na yung pinakamataas na ma-consume nilang oras. No? Ayaw nila ng overtime. Pero, hindi sinasabing totally hindi pwede. Again, this is soft constraint. Now, for the profit, nakakapag-produce ng $7 profit kada isang chandelier, while for the fan, $6. And net na ito. Now, as you can note on our previous slide, it says there that it is net. When we say net, less na lahat ng gastos nila. Ito na talaga yung pinakakita nila per product. Okay? So, let's have now our deviational variables. Okay. For the deviational variables, we have here the D sub 1 negative, and that is the underachievement of the profit target. Again, ang profit target nila, let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation, previous slide. Profit target nila is above 30. Okay? So, underachievement of the profit target is represented by D sub 1 negative. D sub 1 positive naman kapag lumagpas overachievement. Okay? So, for D sub 2 negative, this is the idle time in wiring department or the underutilization. Let's go back here. Ano yun? Ano yung sinasabi na yun? The fully utilized wiring department available hours. So, kung hindi nila na-maximize yung 12 na yan, for example, ang nagamit lang nila is 10 hours, yung 2 hours is yung idle time. I hope you're already familiar with idle time. We have tackled this on the work study and measurement subject. So, we have 2 idle time, and that 2 idle time is represented by D sub 2 negative. Okay? That is the underutilization. And kabaliktaran nun, the overtime naman for wiring department or what we call the overutilization, that is represented by D sub 2 positive. Next, for our third deviational variable, set of variables, D sub 3 negative is the idle time in assembly department or the underutilization. What's that? Actually, our assembly department, ang capacity nila is 30. So, 30 or 29 pababa, that is underutilization. For example, ang na-consume na oras is 29. So, meaning to say, we still have one deviational variable na mako-consider natin as underutilized. And that is represented by D sub 3 negative. Okay? Kabaliktaran, kapag sumobra, that is overutilization or that is the overtime in assembly department, D sub 3 positive. Okay, so last set of deviational variables, the underachievement of the ceiling fan contract goal. So what this is the ceiling fan contract goals? It says here that they have a contract to produce at least 7 ceiling fans. So, for example, they only produced 5 ceiling fans, so the 2 na kulang, that is considered as underachievement of the contract ng fan, no? And that is D sub 4 negative. Kabaliktaran naman nun, D sub 4 positive, that is the overachievement of the ceiling fan contract goal. Now, take note that management is unconcerned about D sub 1 plus or D sub 1 positive, D sub 2 positive, D sub 3 negative, and D sub 4 positive. This may be omitted from the objective function. Think of this, guys. Think about this. What is the reason sa tingin niyo kung bakit unconcerned yung management sa mga deviational variables na ito? Now, I'll give you some time to think what is the reason why management is unconcerned. Wala silang pakialam sa mga deviational variables na ito. Again, D sub 1 positive, D sub 2 positive, D sub 3 negative, and D sub 4 positive. Okay, so for you to grasp the idea more on why management is unconcerned about these deviational variables, let's go back to our goal. Again, first goal is to reach profit above $30 as much as possible. Okay, let's go back. To reach profit above. So, meaning to say, walang pakialam yung management kung umangat man sila sa profit target nila na 30. Kung mamit man nila yung 31, okay lang. Mamit nila yung 32, okay, mas okay. Mas maganda yun, mas malaking kita eh. No? So, wala silang pakialam dito sa D sub 1 positive. Okay? So, next. Ang concern nila dito is yung D sub 1 negative. Kung sobrang baba man ito, dapat mapaangat mo. No? Kung sobrang baba, meaning sobrang taas ng deviational na variable, which is underachievement, dahil napaangat mo. So, yun yung concern nila. Next na goal. Fully utilize wiring department available hours. So, balik tayo dito. Wala daw silang pakialam. They are unconcerned with the sub 2 positive. Ibig sabihin, kung mag-overtime sila sa 12, okay lang. Kasi, kahit ganun ang nangyari, na fully utilized naman nila yung 12. Ang concern nila is wag mag-idle time. Wag bumaba sa 12. Wag mag-underutilize sa 12. And that is the D sub 2 negative. Yung mga binibilugan ko, yung unconcerned variables ng management. Okay? So, D sub 3 negative. Bakit naman ito? Balik tayo. Goal number 3 is to avoid overtime in the assembly department. To avoid overtime in the assembly department. And D sub 3 negative is idle time in assembly department. So, wala silang pakialam kahit hindi mo ma-maximize. Ang importante, no, hindi ka mag-overtime. Ayun yung binabangkit dito. No, sabi kasi, ulitin natin, no, to avoid overtime in the assembly department, and that is 30. No, so, hanggat maaari, sana hindi ka na magpas ng 30. Pero hindi sinabi ng goal na hindi okay sa kanila kapag mababa. Meaning to say, ayun yung concern nila. No, I hope you get it. Next, for the D sub 4 positive, bakit naman hindi rin concern ang management dyan? Sabi dito, ang fourth goal is to meet a contact requirements to produce at least 7 ceiling fans. Ibig sabihin, 7 pataas, okay sa kanila. And yung 7 pataas na yun, that is actually represented by D sub 4 positive. So, okay lang sa kanila yan. Wala silang pakialam dyan. Ang may pakialam sila, yung underachievement ng ceiling fan contract goal, which is represented by D sub 4 negative. Dapat hindi mag-occur yan. Or kung mag-occur man yan, maliit yung deviation. Okay? From 7. Okay? So, that is the goal programming deviational variables. I hope malinaw sa inyong lahat yan. Okay? So, next. Objective function. Now, our objective function here will be min z. Again, z here is not a profit, not a cost, o kung ano man. Z is the summation of all the deviational variables from all the desired goals. So, ang magiging objective function natin dito is ma-minimize natin ang ano? Ma-minimize natin ito, D sub 1 negative, which is actually corresponding sa ating priority 1. Ma-minimize din natin yung D sub 2 negative, which is our second priority. So, one of our goals is also to minimize the deviation of the D sub 3 positive, which corresponds to our third priority, and the D sub 4 negative, which corresponds to the P sub 4 or our fourth priority. Yung mga walang bilog natin. No? That is actually our goal. Yung summation ng lahat ng yan. Okay? So, D1 negative, D2 negative, D sub 3 positive, D sub 4 negative. Okay? So, let's write our complete objective function here. So, for the complete objective function, we have the P sub 1 multiplied to D sub 1 negative plus P sub 2 or the second priority, then D sub 2 negative plus, again, ulitin ko, no? Z stands for the summation of all the deviational variables from all the desired goals. That's why ganito ang itsura ng ating objective function. So, again, plus P sub 3 multiplied to D sub 3 positive plus P sub 4 multiplied to D sub 4 negative. So, somehow, ibang-iba ang itsura ng objective function for goal programming versus sa linear programming. Dahil, again, dito, multiple goals tayo. And this objective function is actually subject to constraints. So, STC. What are our constraints? So, if you can see, guys, let's go back here. Our first constraint here will be our first priority. Okay, so that is all about profit. As you can see, ibang-iba siya. Nung linear programming, pag sabing profit, that is our goal, to maximize profit. But now, in goal programming, profit is one of our constraints. Okay, and what are the profit? So we have here 7x sub 1 plus 6x sub 2. Let's write it here. Okay, so 7x sub 1 plus 6x sub 2 plus, okay I will have here a simple illustration. Ang goal natin is 30. So we have here 30 for profit. Ito, pag bumaba yan, ayan yung D negative. D sub 1 negative. Diba? Kapag umangat yan, ayan naman yung D sub 1 positive. So, kung bumaba yan hanggang 25, ito naman umangat hanggang 40, ang goal natin, pabalik-pabalikin yan sa 30. Pero dahil na walang concern ang management sa D sub 1 positive, kaya siya hindi part ng objective, hindi natin siya kailangan pa-minimize, so walang kwenta ito. Ang magkakaroon dyan ng sense is yung pag-angat nito. Dapat mapaangat natin yan. Dahil maganda to positive yan for profit yan. Now, I hope nakukuha ninyo. Meaning to say, yung deviation, paangat or pababa, kahit pasabihin mo dito na walang concern ang management dito, kasama pa rin siya sa ating magiging constraint dahil it is part of the goal ng goal programming, which is to minimize the deviation. Hindi lang siya yung part ng objective function. What I mean is, we will be having here plus D sub 1 negative minus Y plus. Kasi itong negative, yung bumaba, di ba? So, iaangat natin siya ngayon. Ia-add natin yung value niya para magbalik siya sa 30 o kung ano man yung specific na value. Minus. Bakit naman minus? Dahil ang kadugtong niyan is D sub 1 positive. Kung gaano man kataas yung iniangat niya, kailangan mo siyang ibaba para bumalik siya doon sa goal natin, which is 30. Okay? Kaya tayo nagma-minus dito. Just take note na kung dito sa taas is negative, dapat ang sign niya sa unahan is positive. Kapag nandito sa taas is positive, dapat ang sign niya sa unahan is negative. Okay? And this is equals to 30. Why 30? Babalik tayo sa goal. The goal is to have a profit of 30 above. No? Yung above na yan, kaya nga ayan mga reason kung bakit wala siya. So, objective function. Okay? So, next constraint. This will be our C1. C1 or the profit constraints. Okay? So, next constraint natin, we have here our wiring constraint. So, for the wiring constraint, we have 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2. We have 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2. Same with this one, with the idea dito, we have plus d sub 2 negative minus d sub 2 positive. Equals 12. Why 12? Dahil 12 ang capacity. Now, if kapansinin ninyo, sir, we have here our sign. Less than or equals. Tapos less than or equal din dito sa assembly. Pero bakit ka gumagamit ng equal sign sa ating constraint? We are actually using equal sign in our constraints because we are dealing with goal programming. And again, ang goal natin dito sa goal programming is mag-exact yung values natin doon sa specified na, kung ano man yung specified na value natin. No? So, yes, pwede siyang mas mababa sa 12, pero as much as possible, exact to 12 tayo. That's why it is called goal programming. So, anyway, aside dyan, kung pabalikan ninyo yung linear programming, we are actually turning the inequalities there into equality. So, almost the same ng process, pero different idea behind. Okay, so next, we have here, before that, this will be our C2 or the constraint 2, second constraint, all about wiring. So, wiring constraint. Sorry sa sulat ko, no? Ganyan na talaga yan. So, next, for our third constraint, we have the assembly constraint. So, 6x sub 1 plus 5x sub 2. 6x sub 1 plus 5x sub 2 plus d sub 3 negative minus d sub 3 positive. I hope wala nang nalito dito sa inyo ngayon. Okay, for assembly, we have 30 as our RHS. So, 30 C sub 3. This is 30, not 36. C sub 3. And this is all about the assembly constraint. Okay, so next. Lastly, we have the fourth constraint. So, we're done with this wiring. Okay na rin tayo sa assembly. Profit, ito yung nauna actually. Ito yan eh. Ito yung tatlong goal na yan. Same lang din yan. For the goal number 4, that is the contract ng ceiling funds. Again, ang ceiling funds, that is the X sub 2. So, meaning to say, we don't have X sub 1 here. We only have X sub 2. So, X sub 2 plus D sub 4 negative minus D sub 4 positive. This is equals to 7. Ayun kasi yung contract. No, at least 7 ang maproduce nila. And this is our fourth constraint represented by the variable C sub 4. We have here ceiling fan contract. Contract constraint. Okay. So, additional last variables, same or rather the last constraint, same with our linear programming before. All our variables must be greater than or equals to 0. So, let's write here all x sub I. So, this basically means x sub 1 and x sub 2. And d sub I, so this basically means 2, the d sub 1 and d sub 2 variables must be greater than or equals to 0. Or this is yung tinatawag natin na non-negativity constraint. Okay, so this is non-negativity constraint. We are only dealing with quadrant 1 of the Cartesian coordinate plane. No, positive, positive. Okay, so what is our next na gagawin? So, basically, tulad sa ating linear programming, isa-solve lang natin isa-isa yung mga constraints na yan. Okay, so let's start with constraint 1. Okay, so for C1, we have there 7 x sub 1 plus 6 x sub 2 plus d sub 1 negative minus d sub 1 positive equals 30. So, if x sub 1 equals 0, so this will be 7, 0, plus 6x sub 2. Now, kung titignan nyo dito, since itong d sub 1 negative, positive yung sign niya sa unahan, tapos ima-minus mo ngayon sa d sub 1 positive, basically, magka-cancel out din sila. So, parang nonsense. Yes, nonsense siya for now dahil we're just getting the coordinate points. Pero mamaya, makikita nyo, during our graphing, magkakaroon sila ng sense. No, okay. So, for now, let's move dito. Equals to 30 sila dahil na-cancel itong dalawa. So, we don't have an x sub 1 here. So, divide both sides sa 6. So, x sub 2 will be 5. Okay? So, 0 and 5. That is our first point. Okay, so if x sub 2 equals 0, we have here 7 multiplied to x sub 1 plus 6 multiplied to 0 plus d sub 1 negative minus d sub 1 positive, which is magka-cancel out din, equals to 30. cancel ito. So, may E1 is 7, x sub 1, equals 30. This is equals, guys. Divide both sides to 7. So, mangyayari, we have x sub 1 equals 30 over 7. So, ang ating second point is 30 over 7 and 0. Itong 30 over 7, actually, this is equals to 4.29. Okay, in decimal place. Okay? So, that is for our C1. Now, let's try to have the graph here. Okay, so, ayan, graphing tayo. Lakihan natin yung graph para magkasya sila. Let's write here our vertical line and our horizontal line here. Kunyari, pantay, no? Okay, so, let's have 1 to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Seven, 8. 1 to 8 din dito para pantay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's extend konti. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 labels. Don't forget. 5, 6, 7, 8. So, let's write here. Ito ang ating magiging line for our constraint number 1. Again, 0 and 5. We used white for constraint 1, no? 0 and 5. So, nasaan yun? 0 and 5. Ito siya. And 30 over 7. And again, that is actually equals to 4.29. 4.29 and 0. So, let's go here. 4.29 around here. And let's connect these 2 points. This will be our line for C1. Okay? For C1. Now, eto na. Nasaan yung shading? Kasi ang goal natin, minimization. Diba? Minimization ng mga deviations. Lakihan natin. Okay. Pagdating dito sa C1, ang ating magiging D sub 1 negative ay actually papunta dito sa baba. No? So, obvious na yon, napaka-basic na yon. D sub 1 negative. Kapag D sub 1 positive, pataas yan. No? D sub 1 positive. Now, balikan natin. Ang mini-minimize natin dito sa objective function, ang mini-minimize natin is D sub 1 negative. So, nasaan yung D sub 1 negative? Nandito. Mini-minimize natin yan. So, meaning to say, dito ang gagawin natin na shaded area for the C1. Doon tayo sa may D sub 1 positive mag-shade. Dahil yun yung area na kung saan kahit anong point dyan ang makuha natin, okay lang sa atin. Dahil ayaw nga natin doon sa kabila. No, I hope malinaw sa inyo. So, ayan, dito ang shaded area niyan. For C1. Okay, now for C2, let's solve the values for C2. Gamit tayo ng different color for our pen. Let's use here yellow. Okay. For C2, again, we have for C2 ang ating tawag dito, ang ating equation is 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus d sub 2 negative minus d sub 2 positive equals to 12. Okay. So, if x sub 1 is equals to 0, this will be 2 multiplied to 0 plus 3x sub 2 plus d sub 2 negative minus d sub 2 positive. This will be cancelled, equals 12. So, cancel ito, divide both sides sa 3, cancel, divide ito sa 3. And x sub 2 will be 4. So, meaning to say, our first point is 0 and 4. Okay? So, if x sub 2 naman ang nag-0 natin, we have 2 x sub 1 plus 3 multiplied to 0, cancel to, plus d sub 2 negative minus d sub 2 positive, and this will be cancelled out, equals 12. Okay? So, divide both sides into 2. So, x sub 1 will be equals to 12 divided by 2. We have here 6. Okay? So, therefore, our next na point will be 6 and 0. Okay? So, let's try to graph itong C2 natin na mga points. 0 and 4, tapos 6 and 0. Okay? So, 0 and 4. Ito ang ating first point. And we have 6 and 0. Ito ang ating second point. Okay, so let's connect these 2 points. Ayan, kunyari ulit, pantay. This will be our C sub 2. Okay, now, for the C sub 2, same with C sub 1 kanina, yung pababa dyan, this will be the deviational variable na negative. And yung paangat naman dyan, this will be the D sub 2 positive. Now, balik tayo doon sa ating balik tayo doon sa ating objective function. Okay, so ang mini-minimize natin dito is same with our first constraint. Ang mini-minimize natin is yung D sub 2 negative. So, ayaw natin doon, which is yung area na to, yung pababa na yan. Ibig sabihin, itong area na to ulit, no, itong area na to, ang area na kung saan ma-meet man ito ng ating constraint 2, okay lang. So, kasama yan. Ayan. Okay. So, ito. Ayan. Kasama yung mga area na yan. Hindi doon sa kabila. And actually, guys, kung babalikan ninyo yung linear programming ninyo, ng Operations Research 1, almost same siya talaga, no, sa minimization. Ayan. Okay? So, let's proceed with our next constraint, our third constraint. For this third constraint, gamit tayo ng color sa cyan naman. Okay, so for C3, ang equation natin for C3 is 6x sub 1 plus 5x sub 2 plus d sub 3 negative minus d sub 4 positive. That is equals to 30. Okay, so if x sub 1 equals 0, so this will be 6 multiplied to 0 plus 5 x sub 2 plus d sub 3 minus negative minus d sub 4 positive equals 30. So this will be cancelled out. Cancel. Divide 5. Divide 5. So x sub 2 will be 6. Therefore, our first coordinate pair is 0 and 6. Okay, so for C3 yan. Na first point. For the second point, so let x sub 2 equals 0. We have here 6 x sub 1 plus 5 multiplied to 0 plus this is 0, guys, plus d sub 3 negative minus d sub 4 positive equals 30. So this will be cancel. Divide both sides into 6. So x sub 1 is equals to 5. Therefore, our second point is 5 and 0. So let's try to graph this 0, 6, and 5 and 0 on our graph here. So 0 and 6, dito banda siya. Ayan. And 5 and 0. Ito. Okay. So, 0 and 6, 5 and 0. Let's connect these 2 points. Ayan. Kunyari ulit, pantay. Sige, lagay natin dito, no? Pagpababa yan, basically, this will be the D sub 3 negative. And kapag paangat yan, yung blue, this will be the D sub 4 positive. And let's go back to our objective function. Ang ating mini-minimize dito is yung P sub 3 multiplied to D sub 3 plus positive. No, ayun yung mini-minimize natin. Ibig sabihin, kung titignan ninyo, dito sa C3, parang sinasabi natin na since D sub 3 positive, yung i-minimize natin. Ano nga ulit yung D sub 3 positive? Balikan natin dito. Overtime in assembly department. Diba? Ayaw nilang magkaroon ng overtime. That is part of their goal number 2. Meaning to say, kung babalikan natin yung graph, dapat itong cyan na kulay natin or yung ating C3, no, yung kulay blue, pababa dapat na siya. Now, kung pababa na yan, ito tayo, no? Ito na siya. Ito yung shaded area dyan sa kanya. Ayan. Ayan. Ito siya. Pababa na siya. Now, nasaan na yung area na kung saan nagmamatch silang lahat? No, actually, ito yun. Ulitin ko lang tong line na ito para mag-straight siya ng konti. Ayan. No, actually, yung area na nagmamatch silang tatlo is ito na. No, ito. Ayan. Ito. Ay, ang area na yan. So, medyo anuhin natin yung shading para mas makita ninyo. Itong area na yan. Diyan sila nagmamatch na tatlo. Again, no, tatlo pa lang tayo. Wala pa yung last na constraint natin. Wala pa yung constraint natin regarding the fund na contract. Huh? Okay, so gawin na natin yun para matapos tayo. For our fourth constraint, let's use ano bang kulay? Color pen, we already used the white. Green naman tayo. Okay, so for C4. For C4, our equation for C4 is actually napakasimple. X sub 2 lang. No, X sub 2 plus D sub 4 minus or D sub 4 negative minus D sub 4 positive equals to 7. So, wala tayong if X sub 1 equals 0. Walang ganun dahil basically, maka-cancel to, and X sub 2 is equals to 7. Or, ang point niyan will be 0 tapos 7. Wala na siyang isang kapartner. Ibig sabihin, kung titignan natin siya sa graph, ito lang yan. No? 0 tsaka 7. Ito yung point niya. And since wala siyang isa pang point na kapares dito sa ating x-axis or sa abscissa, magiging direct lang siya dito, horizontal line. Okay. And, kung titignan natin, yung katumbas niya na deviational variables, ang magiging D sub 4 negative niyan is actually yung pababa dito. So, this is D sub 4 negative. And kapag pataas dyan, that is this D sub 4 positive. Okay? I hope you get it, guys. And kung babalik tayo sa ating objective function, our objective function here says that we should minimize the D sub 4 negative. And nasaan yun? Yung P sub 4, D sub 4 negative, nandito. So, ayaw natin sa area na yan. Meaning to say, ang magiging shaded area natin for this is itong nasa taas. Dito siya, yung D sub 4 positive. Dito sa taas na yan. Now, as you can see, we are all done plotting the points for all of our constraints. And yung ating fourth constraint or yung last constraints ay nasa taas. No, unboundedness. This is actually unboundedness type of linear programming, special case. No, dun siya sa taas. Wala siya, nasa iba siya, out of place. Kumbaga. No, and kung babalikan natin, again, yung mga points or yung area or the region ng ating graph kung saan nag-i-equal silang lahat or nagja-jive silang tatlo is eto. No, dagdagan natin yung shading para mas makita. Ayan, ito siya. Ito, ha. And, ayan. Okay. Kaya mga points na yan. Okay. So, lakihan natin yung mga points. Actually, meron tayong intersection eh. No, meron tayong intersection points. And yung intersection points natin, pinakaunang intersection is ito. Itong intersection ng white at ng yellow. No, ito yung pinakauna. Pangalawang intersection, we have this intersection ng blue and ng yellow. And yung last na point natin is ito na. Okay, so total, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Now, ang tanong dyan, among all of these points, this is the feasible region. Among all of this feasible region, saan dyan yung optimum solution na kung saan pinakamaliit lahat ng deviation. Okay? So, before that, no, para ma-solve natin, we need to have a proper labeling sa mga points na yan. So, let's try to label this point as point A. Ito naman ay point B natin. Ito ang gawin nating point C, and this will be our point D. Okay. So, let's check the value for each points. Okay, so let's have here. Balik na tayo sa, sige, sayan na lang. Sayan na lang yung kulay. Balik tayo. So, let's now have point A. So, point A, basically, that is obvious naman, no, sa ating graph. That is 0 and 6. So, no need to solve something here. 0 and 6 na yan. So, for point B, check natin. Point B is the intersection of yellow, or that is the C2, no, our constraints number 2, and yung blue, which is C3. So, C2 and C3. So, let's solve here. C2 and C3. 4-point letter B. Okay, so for the equation for C2, this is 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus d sub 2 negative minus d sub 2 positive equals 12. Okay, so for C3, we have 6x sub 1 plus 5x sub 2 plus d sub 3 negative minus d sub 3 positive equals to 30. Now, let's solve this. So, we have here d sub 2 positive tsaka negative, and same with d sub 3 positive and negative. So, this will be cancelled out. Now, let's try to multiply natin ito into negative 3. Para ang mangyayari, negative 3 multiplied to 2 will be 6. So, maka-cancel muna natin yung x sub 1. Okay, so we will be having our next equation dito. Mangyayari negative 6 x sub 1 minus 9 x sub 2 equals negative 36. 12 times 3 negative. So, negative 36. Let's copy the equation for C3. So, 5x2 equals 30. And by this way, maka-cancelled out na ang ating x sub 1. So, this will be negative 4x sub 2, negative 6. So, divide both sides sa ating negative 4. So, x sub 2 here will be positive 3 over 2. Okay, so next slide tayo. Since x sub 2 equals positive 3 over 2, check naman natin ngayon, try natin to substitute itong value ng 3 over 2 sa isa sa ating mga equations. So, ang gamitin na lang siguro natin is itong C3. So, substitute natin yung 3 over 2 dito. So, 6x sub 1 plus 5 multiplied to 3 over 2 equals 30. So, 6x sub 1 plus, we have here 15 over 2 equals 30. So, lipat-lipat lang. 30 minus 15 over 2. So, this will be 6x sub 1 equals 45 over 2. So, divide both sides sa 6. So, x sub 1 will be 15 over 4. So, basically, yung ating point B is equals to 15 over 4 and yung x sub 2 natin na 3 over 2. So, ito yung value na. If we will going to change this into decimal, so this is equivalent to 3.75 and 1.5. And kung titignan natin sa graph, yung almost correct naman, 3.75 tapos 1.5. Okay, so let's write it here. Okay, so point B is 3.75 and 1.5. Okay, so next for our point C. So as you can see, ang ating point C dito is the intersection of our line na white, which is the first constraint, and the second constraint, yung yellow, the C2. So, C1 and C2. So solve natin ang ating value for point C, C1 and C2. So, for the C1, I hope you still remember, 7x sub 1 plus 6x sub 2 plus D sub 1 negative minus D sub 1 positive equals to 30. For the C sub 2, or the second constraint, we have 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus D sub 2 negative minus D sub 2 positive equals to 12. Okay? So, let's solve now. Now, basically, ang una natin gagawin is to cancel this, tsaka ito. And in-multiply natin ito to negative 2 para maging 3 times 2, negative 6. Ma-cancel out muna yung ating x sub 2. Okay, so let's copy ang ating first equation. And magkakaroon tayo ng panibagong second equation. And that will be negative 4x sub 1 minus 6x sub 2 equals to negative 24. So, cancel na to. This will be positive 3x sub 1. So, equals to 6. This is 6. So, divide both sides into 3. So, x sub 1 will be 2. Now, kung 2 itong x sub 1, let's try to substitute ito sa ating first equation. So, 7 multiplied to 2 plus 6x sub 2 equals 30. So, this will be 14 plus 6x sub 2 equals 30. So, 6x sub 2 equals 30 minus 14. Lipat lang. So, 6x sub 2 equals 30 minus 14 is 16. Divide both sides into 6. So, 16 divided by 6, this will be 8 over 3. Or, this is equivalent to 2.67. So, for the point C, ang ating point here is x sub 1 is 2 and 8 over 3. Or, this is equals to 2 and 2.67. And kung titignan natin, kung i-check natin sa ating graph, 2 and 2.67, somehow, tama or malayo dahil this is tinansya lang natin, this is not exact. So, ang value niya is again 2 and 2.67. So, for our point D, obviously, our point D is 0 and 5. Let's write it here. So, point D is 0 and 5. Okay? So, ayan yung mga points natin. Now, let's have our, what we call this, let's have our tabulation, no, ng ating mga data dito para makita natin kung saan ba yung dapat natin kunin na sagot. Okay, so lagay natin dito. Siguro i-delete ko na lang itong last na sinulat natin para hindi siya makakos ng error visually. So let's write here white. Ang goal natin, lagay ko muna dito yung goal. So we have here the goal. For the first goal, second goal, third goal, and fourth goal. So let's write here. Our requirement for the first goal, kung naalala nyo pa, magkaroon tayo ng profit na mas mataas or equals to 30. Okay? So for number 2, utilize natin yung 12 hours. Okay? For the third goal, avoid natin yung OT or yung overtime. So, this is less than or equals to 30 hours. And last goal, dapat yung ma-produce natin is na fund is greater than or equals to 7. Ito yung mga requirement. So, ayan yung mga requirement. Now, we have our different points. For the point A, lagay natin dito. For the point A, ang point A natin ay 0 and 6. So, lagay natin doon. 0 and 6. Okay. So, point B, we have here our point B. 3.75, 1.5. So, 3.75, 1.5. We have here our point C, which is equivalent to ito, 2 tsaka 2.67. So, 2 tsaka 2.67. And lastly, our last point is the point D. Or ito yung 0 and 5. Okay. Now, if we were going to substitute, guys, hindi ko na siya isa-substitute isa-isa. So, just substitute it by yourself. If we were going to substitute this, 0, tsaka 6. Anyway, sige, i-substitute ko na para makita ninyo. So, for first constraint tayo, let's try to solve isa-isa kada constraint. Ipapalit natin yung mga data natin, yung mga points na to. Okay. So, for C1 tayo, ang equation for C1 is 7x sub 1 plus 6x sub 2. No? Equals to 30. Ito yung equation doon. 0 and 6. Direct substitution tayo. So, 6 times 6, cancel, 30. So, this will be 36. No? Greater than or equals to 30. Sabi niya dito eh. No? So, tama. So, 36 ito. Nasatisfy niya ba yung goal? Yes. Okay. Next. For our point B. Excuse me. For our point B. 7 multiplied to 3.75 plus 6 multiplied to 1.5 equals 30. Dapat ito higher than 30. Kapag in-equate natin itong equation na to, this will be actually 35.25. And this is greater than or equals to 30. Tama. So, lagay natin 35.25. So, okay. Nasatisfy niya. Higher pa rin. So, meaning, point A or point P, piliin natin so far, okay lang. So, okay. Pagdating sa point C, let's try. So, 7, 2, plus 6 multiplied to 2.67. Dapat daw higher or equals to 30. And if we will calculate this, that this will be equals to 30.02. And higher naman siya sa 30. Okay yan. So, 30.02. Now, 0 and 5. Let's have 7 times 0 plus 6 times 5. So, this will be cancelled. Dapat higher than 30. 6 times 5 is 30. So, greater than or equals to 30 ba siya? Yes, exact to 30 nga eh. So, this meaning, itong point din natin, 30, okay pa rin siya. Okay, now, sa goal 1, kung goal 1, kahit anong point, okay lang. That's actually what it means. Now, for our second constraint, next slide tayo. For second constraint, for C2. Okay, for C2, ang ating equation is 2x sub 1 plus 3, x sub 2 equals 12. That is our equation. Okay? So, substitute natin si point A. 0 and 6. So, 2, 0, 3, 6, 12. Cancel. 6 times 3, 18. Anong sabi? Utilize 12 hours. So, meaning to say, etong 18 na to, mas mataas siya sa 12. Ibig sabihin, okay lang. Kasi na-utilize mo naman. Di ba nga, sabi natin kanina, walang pakialam si management kung umangat man tayo sa 12. Ngayon yung dinisregard natin sa deviational variable. So, okay lang yan. Next, sa point B, 3.75. Sa point B, no? Ang point B natin is 3.75 plus 3 multiplied to 1.5. Equivalent yan sa 12. Eksakto. So, eksaktong 12 siya. So, let's write here 12. Okay pa rin. No, na-utilize niya pa rin. Eksakto pa nga eh. So, points natin 2 tsaka 2.67. So, let's write here point C. 2 and 3, 2.67. If we will going to calculate this will be equals to 12.01. And this is actually greater than or equals to 12. Ayan, greater than or equals to 12. So, pwede pa rin. No? 12.01. Next, for point D, 0 and 5. 0 and 5. So, let's write here 2 multiplied to 0 plus 3 multiplied 5. So, this must be greater than or equals to 12. If we will calculate this, cancel ito. 3 times 5, this is 15. No? So, greater than 12 pa rin. Tama pa rin. This is 1. So, 15. Okay, tama pa rin. Next, for our third constraint. We're actually patapos na. No? For C3. Ang equation natin for C3 is 6x sub 1 plus 5x sub 2 equals to 30. So, for point A, that is 0 and 6, substitute natin. 0 plus 5 multiplied to 6. Cancel ito. 6 times 5, that is 30. So, 30 equals 30. Lagay natin dito sa ating summary table. So, 30. Okay pa rin. Okay pa rin siya. Okay. So, next. Substitute naman natin yung point B for our C3. Okay. So, 6. Substitute to 3.75 plus 5. Tapos, ito is 1.5 equals 30. If we will go into calculate this, ang kakalabasan niya is 30 rin. No? So, 30 equals 30. So, 30 rin siya dito. So, okay pa rin. So, ano kaya ang mapipili natin? No? So, for point C, let's try to substitute naman yung points natin for point C. So, here we have 6, 2, tsaka 2.67. So, 2 plus 5, 2.67 equals 30. So, if we will go to calculate this on your calculator, this will be equals to 25.35. So, ito is okay, so kung titingnan nyo, this is actually less than 30. No? And kung titingnan nyo, ayun naman yung goal eh. No, ayun no, less than 30. So, okay pa rin. No? So, 25.35. Okay pa rin. Mas bababa pa rin siya sa 30. No? So, less than siya. Less than or equals to 30. Next, lastly, our point D, or yung 0 tsaka 5. 6 multiplied to 0 plus 5 multiplied to 5 less than or equals to 30. So, this must be less than or equals, less than or equals. Ayan. Okay. So, cancel ito. 5 times 5, that is 25. And that is less than or equals to 30 pa rin. Uy, hanggang ngayon, okay pa rin lahat, no? Ibig sabihin, no, lahat ng points, so far, okay pa rin. Pwede natin siyang piliin. No? At check natin kung ganun pa rin kaya sa ating last na goal before tayo mag-finalize ng ating decision. Okay. So, for our C4 or yung last goal natin or last constraint natin, our equation there is x sub 2 dapat daw greater than or equals to 7. Okay, yung x sub 2 natin doon. Now, check natin. Ano ba yung x sub 2 ng A? 6. So, yung 6 ba is greater than or equals to 7? Hindi na. So, ayan, hindi na siya na-satisfy. Ayan na, may isa nang hindi, no? Lalo na to. 1.5. Hindi siya greater than or equals to 7. So, X na yan. Point C, 2.67, sabi niya dito. So, hindi pa rin. Point D, 0 tsaka 5. 5 yung X sub 2 niya. Hindi pa rin. O, anong conclusion natin ngayon? Ano yung pipiliin natin na best na point for our goal? Actually, the best point here is kung meron man tayong constraint na hindi natin ma-meet lahat, ang pipiliin natin is yung pinakamalapit. Ang goal natin dito sa ating goal number 4 is 7. Ano yung pinakamalapit sa 7? That is actually 6. 1.5 malayo na, 2.65. 5 pwede pa, pero mas malapit si 6. No? And kung titingnan po natin, pagdating sa profit, kung babalikan nyo, no? We have our priority, and ito rin yun, yung priority tsaka goal. So, natin yung goal natin and priority, same sila, 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, sabi ko nga kanina, pwedeng mag-rumbles yung priority. Kapag ganun nangyari, iibahin nyo lang yung pagkasunod-sunod pag row. No? Yun lang din naman yun. Anyway, so yung priority number 1 natin, profit, mas mataas daw sa 30. Ano yung pinakamataas? Ito, 36. So, first priority pa lang, lamang na si point A. Okay? I hope you get it. Next, second priority, utilize 12. So, pwedeng exactly 12, pwedeng mas mataas 12. Basta magamit mo yung 0 hanggang 12 hour. So, ano mas malaki dyan? 18. No? So, okay. Point A na naman. For avoiding 30 hours daw. Pwedeng exacto 30. No, less than or equals to 30. And lahat sila doon, pasok. No, dito sa reasoning niya, lahat sila pasok. Tapos, sa number 4, 6 yung pinababa. So, meaning to say, majority na napipiliin natin is yung point A. Or yung point na 0 and 6. Ito yung final natin. X sub 1 is 0, and X sub 2 natin is 6. Ito ang ating magiging final answer for this goal programming problem. So, you don't have to produce any chandelier, and you need to produce 6 ceiling fans. And for the finalization of our topic for our discussion, status, we have here, achieve natin itong goal 1 with priority number 1. Achieve yan. Na-achieve din natin itong second. Of course, achieve din siya. Same with our third one. Na-achieve din natin. Itong fourth ang hindi natin na-achieve. And kung babalikan ninyo yung definition natin ng goal programming, this is actually multi-condition or multi-criteria. In our case, we have 4 criteria. Tatlo doon sa criteria na yun ang na-achieve natin. And yung isa, hindi natin siya na-achieve or we violated the goal number 4. And again, dyan papasok yung characteristics ng goal programming na meron siyang soft constraints. And okay lang po yun na na-violate natin yung goal 4. At least, majority is achieved pa rin siya. And at the same time, yung priorities natin per leveling, priority 1, 2, 3 is na-achieve. Ang hindi naman natin na-achieve is less priority naman siya. So, that's basically how the goal programming works. I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the topic and its relationship, of course, with the linear programming problem. Okay, so I hope natuto kayo with this discussion and prepare for examination, of course, regarding this topic. Okay, i-review nyo lang ng i-review lahat ng tututunan dahil all topics under operations research are all interconnected. Okay, so see you on our next tutorial and I hope you learned something. Bye-bye!